Sounds good. So let's get started. Hello,
Great. Can you
everyone.
guys hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you just fine. Hello, everyone.
Great.
Welcome to the second M&G Career Spotlight interview. I am Danny Marcus.
And I am Hayden Gensler. Today, we are so honored to be hosting Dr. William Paiva, the Managing Director of the Oklahoma Life Science Fund, which is a venture fund located here in Oklahoma that focuses on healthcare companies. Dr. Paiva has an amazing background, having been named Innovator of the Year, Venture Capital Pioneer Award, Patterson Foundation Chair, and on the Oklahoma 40 Under 40 list. Dr. Paiva, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you. I kind of forgot about all those. So thank you.
Yeah, totally. So it's great to see you again. We actually had the chance to meet Dr. Paiva at BC School when he was a panelist, an event that was put together by I2E at 36 Degrees North last fall. So Dr. Paiva, in about a minute, could you give us a little bit of background of where you study, what you studied, and a couple of your hobbies?
Yeah, no. So I grew up in Oklahoma, graduated from high school in Claremore, Oklahoma, went to the University of Oklahoma. Thought initially I wanted to be an academic scientist. So I did a PhD in molecular biology, microbiology. And then when I was doing my postdoctoral fellowship, which think of it as like your residency if you're a medical doctor, your clerkship, I guess, if you're a law school graduate. But anyway, doing my postdoctoral fellowship, I decided I wanted to make a shift and get into the, not really out of science, but to get on the business side of science. So I went to business school and I got an MBA at Dartmouth College, really to get on the business side of science. And that accomplished exactly what I wanted it to do. And so for the last 21 years, really the last 25 years have been focused on kind of the application, the applied side of science and actually bringing products to market. So less doing the basic research in the actual lab, more doing the applied science. In terms of hobbies, I like to play golf, like to play racquetball. I like doing stand-up comedy. And let's see what else. I'm kind of a big study of what I call luck, about how people can make their own luck. That luck isn't luck. You can actually make your luck. So I've read a number of books on luck and how to think about luck as not necessarily just something that happens to somebody in terms of you got lucky and you won the lottery, or you got lucky and that happened to you, but rather how do you put yourself in a position to be lucky? So anyway, those are some of the things I'm interested in.
Yeah, that's awesome. So as a venture capitalist, what would you say is the job of a venture capitalist?
So several things, lots of things. And so we raise money from investors that believe in what we are able to accomplish. And what we're able to accomplish is find promising new technology businesses, invest in them, grow them, and sell them in a profitable way. And if we do that correctly, then the fund that we're managing generates the returns that the investors want to see, right? And so our number one goal is to make money for our investors. And our number one goal and related to that is they want us to make as much money as we can, as fast as we can, right? And so our goal is to make money for our investors. And how we do that, like I said, is to find promising companies to invest in. We only do healthcare. So we invest in all sorts of healthcare companies. We'll do drug companies, device companies, medical diagnostic companies, technology-enabled service companies, kind of across the gamut of healthcare. But everything we do is in healthcare. And you'll tend to find venture capitalists are mostly specialized, especially on the early stage side. They tend to fall into specific categories, right? So you'll find healthcare venture capitalists, you'll find software venture capitalists, you'll find, telecommunications, you'll find, people that do wireless technology, right? So they tend to, especially in the early stage, tend to specialize. And so we only do healthcare. The role of the venture capitalist, after we raise the money from our investors, is to seek out those investments. After we make those investments, our goal is to help those portfolio companies grow and become really large companies so we can make a disproportionate return to the risk we take. How do we do that? Well, we do that really by sharing our experiences with entrepreneurial companies. We've been at this for 21 years, so we've seen a lot of things work and not work, right? And so, over time, it's pattern recognition. We see different patterns of things that work and things that don't work. So we try to share some of those learnings with the portfolio companies so they don't pay for the same mistakes we've already paid for previously. The other way we try to help is providing the portfolio companies access to customers. I mean, we all have big and broad Rolodexes, and we try to help the portfolio companies generate sales through our network that they might not otherwise be able to do. Thirdly, we help portfolio companies, identify, recruit, and retain talent. So go get the best and brightest people to go work at the companies. And then lastly, as the companies continue to grow, is to help them get future fundraising. So as they continue to grow and need more and more capital, we have networks of investors we've worked with in the past, and we bring them to bear and try to help them raise money downstream as they continue to grow. So those are kind of at the high level of kind of what we do and kind of the quote unquote value we add, if you will.
Awesome. So if you're able to speak about it, what are some of the portfolio companies or some of the companies that you guys are following right now that you're most excited about?
Well, I'll highlight one real quick. Probably the company that's most visible in terms of ones your audience may know about is we funded a company in, gosh, this would have been 2010, maybe a little bit later, about 10 years ago. It's a company called Cardia. And if you see this device, you probably, if you watch CNN, Fox News, MSNBC, late night news, you'll see this device advertised on TV. It's a device that allows you with the app on your smartphone to record, and I'm going to do it for you real quick. So I put my two thumbs on the electrodes, and then it should start streaming my EKG.
Wow.
Yes. Oh, awesome. That's super cool.
So this is what's called a single lead EKG, because it's right thumb over left thumb or right hand over left hand. And what it'll do, and this is an FDA approved device. Oops.
It's awesome.
Let me see what happened real quick. I'm going to show you something. I kind of wish it would have gotten all the way to the end, but let me go ahead and let it stream for 30 seconds and then I'll come back to you. But it's a FDA approved device. It was developed by an Oklahoma City cardiologist, and I'll tell you the story about how he developed it because it would be really interesting to hear. But at the end, what's really super cool about it, when we get down to the end here of 13 seconds, 12 at the end, it's got about 8 to 10 algorithms that run on top of it.
Oh, wow.
And it will tell you at the end, it'll say, so it's analyzing the rhythm strip, and then what it says right there is normal sinus rhythm.
Yeah.
So had I been in atrial fibrillation, brachycardia, tachycardia, any number of heart rhythm issues, it would have popped up red and said, you need to go see a healthcare professional because you're in a heart arrhythmia. So previously you used to have to go to a hospital to do that, right? To get a clinical quality EKG. But this is a technology that we funded many years ago to allow somebody or anybody with a smartphone to do a clinical quality EKG. So if you're living with atrial fibrillation, if you're living with any other heart arrhythmias, this is a device that allows you to do that. So that's an example of a company. You said, give you an example of some companies. That's a company that's very visible and people know about it because they see it on TV all the time. But we seed funded that, 10 years ago with the founding cardiologist out of Oklahoma City. We also funded a therapeutic company out of Oklahoma City called Selexis, which at the end of phase 2 clinicals, Novartis bought it, and then they finished the phase 3 clinicals, and now it's on the market. It's a drug for sickle cell crisis. If you're a sickle cell patient And a certain percent of people that live with sickle cell disease end up in what's called a crisis event, because the red blood cells that are sickle shaped will clog up, and then they will lead to an inflammatory reaction within your blood vessels, and it causes a lot of pain. So we have that drug is on the market. Another company in Tulsa called Care ETC, which provides near-site, on-site clinics for self-insured employers. We sold that to a private equity fund. But those are some of the deals we've done. What do I like going forward? Very, very interested in, let's call it loosely, the consumerization of healthcare.
Okay.
Pushing more and more healthcare out to the edge. So healthcare out of the health system, healthcare out of the primary care environment, and out to the edge, and specifically out to this edge, which is your smartphone. This is going to eventually become your doctor, right? Your doctor here, right? And so we love technologies that begin to push more and more healthcare out to the edge, and specifically to smartphone platforms. So that's an area where we spend a lot of time, is in the whole area of digital health, digital therapeutics, and pushing healthcare to the edge.
That's awesome. So
hopefully that helps.
Oh yeah, totally.
Plenty of examples. Thank you. So what are you looking for in these startups to ensure it's a sound investment? Is it all the product, the financials, the management? What is it that you're looking for?
Okay. So when we analyze a deal, there's 4 to 5, 5 to 6, 6 to 7 metrics we look for. But I always refer to those as kind of exclusionary metrics. In other words, if they're not addressing a $1 billion market with a B, we're generally not interested. If they don't have intellectual property or patents, we're not interested. If their gross margins are not healthy, we're generally not interested, right? If it's not capital efficient, in other words, it doesn't need a lot of money, we don't like deals where it's going to take multiple hundreds of millions of dollars, because it's just too much capital. So they have to be capital efficient. Those are kind of the things you kind of look for in every deal. And you guys learn that in school, right? Write a business plan, talk about the $1 billion markets, talk about your proprietary position, talk about the gross margins, talk about the scalability of it, right? Talk about the capital efficiency of it, right? But all of those are kind of what I call, you kind of have to meet all of those checks in the box to get somebody interested enough to write in a check. So if those things are not checked, then they'll probably won't do the deal. But ultimately at the end, what the ultimate end decision is, which is after we've checked all the boxes, now I've got 4 to 5, 5 to 6, 6 to 7 deals that have all checked the box, right? So now the question is, how do I pick from all of those, right? And pick the ones that I might want to do. Well, that then comes down to your confidence in the management team, right? So do I believe these folks can actually execute the plan, right? And so, at the end of the day, we don't, with the exception of maybe a biotech deal where the drug fails its clinical trial and there's not much we can do about it. But in general, in medical diagnostics, medical devices, tech-enabled services, we can almost always build the product. Like if this is the product that you would think you're going to start out and make, and this is just a little disc that spins on my desk. But all it does is, I just have it on my desk for fun. But all it does is kind of spin, right? Well,
wait. I think it's his.
hey, I don't know what happened.
Awesome.
I
No
know.
worries. We're back.
All right, I'm back. Hey guys.
Hey,
I don't know what
sorry
happened.
about that. Yeah.
No
you're
worries.
Well, stuff happens from time to time.
good.
So where do you guys want to start? Do you want to start over or just kind of where we were?
No, we can just go back to where we were.
Yeah, we'll just
Okay. So I think I was talking about like why things fail, et cetera, about how, we invest, ultimately we come down to the last criteria is, do we believe the team and the team can execute, right?
Mhm.
And then I went from there. So I'll just start there.
Awesome.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And then you guys can sew it together later, I assume.
Yes.
So, at the end of the day, once we check all those boxes of things we're looking for in the deal, it ultimately comes down to this gut feel about like, do we believe this team can pull it off, right? Do we believe that they can actually execute it, right? Because, we generally don't lose money on technology, with the exception of like a biotech deal, right? If the clinical trial fails, then there's not much you can do, right? Because it just didn't work, right? But
Mhm.
for everything else, whether it's a medical device, a medical diagnostic, a tech-enabled service, we can almost always build the product. And to use a simple analogy, I've got this little ball that spins on my desk, and it sits there and it spins, and but
Mhm.
let's say this was a medical device or something, right? Well, we might think we're going to build this, right? And then over the course of a journey of a few years, we're building it. It may not end up being exactly like this, right? It
Mhm.
may not be perfectly round. It may not be silver. It might be gold. It may not have the lines in it that we want. But ultimately, we can build some form of the product, right? Whether it's a medical device, a diagnostic, tech-enabled service, right? We can almost always build something. So we generally don't lose money on the technology or our ability to build the technology. We lose money on the ability or the willingness of the market to accept the product, right? Will the dogs eat the dog food, et
Mhm.
cetera, right? And so lots of times when I see investor presentations and even advice to people watching this video is, I don't need to see 20 slides on the product, right?
Mhm.
Just show me a few slides on the product, just because that way I can kind of know what you're doing. But at the end of the day, what I'm mostly interested in is what's your go-to-market strategy, right?
Mhm.
And how are you going to put it in the market? How are you going to access the customers? The hardest thing to do in all of this stuff is, how do you access the customers in a cost-effective manner, right?
Mhm.
And because sometimes you can access the customers, but maybe not in a cost-effective manner. So for instance, if the only way to access the customer is by, you have to put it on Walmart shelves. Well,
Mhm.
that's true, but Walmart's going to take a pound of flesh out of you to do that, right? Because they know that they own the channel to the consumer, right? So the question is, can you get access to the customers in a cost-effective manner, right? So I tell entrepreneurs, and I even tell, people when they present, and sometimes when I feel like they're going on and on and on about the product way too much, I'll stop them
Mhm.
and say, look, I'll stipulate you can build your product. Let's just have a discussion about how are you going to get to market, through what channels, how are you going to position it, why are they going to care, how are you going to price it, what's their value prop, all those sorts of things. Because like I said, we don't lose money on this, because I know we
Mhm.
can build something like this. What we lose money on is, can you find the customers who will buy this, right? And
Mhm.
so
Yeah.
anyway, so at the end, it really does, you go through all the check boxes of what they're going to do. Big markets, intellectual property or proprietary position, it's scalable, it's got good gross margins, it's capital efficient. Those are all box checking. At the end, ultimately, what'll push us over the edge as to whether we'll write a check is, do
Mhm.
we believe these people can pull it off, that this team can pull it off?
Mhm. Yeah. So yeah, team is really, really important. So as we get close to an end here, I wanted to ask you, when did you know that VC was the career for you, and what advice would you give to students that are now kind of picking their careers?
Yeah. Okay. So I'll tell you the story. So when I was doing my postdoctoral fellowship, I kind of thought I wanted to be in venture capital, even going all the way back to then, right?
Mhm.
And I'll never forget, I mailed out, gosh, probably 150 letters to venture capital funds throughout
Oh
the
wow.
United States to check on seeing if I could get a job. I received 150 declines. I might have received more than that, because people
Oh
sent me
wow.
multiple letters to decline me. But so I knew back then I wanted to get into venture capital. Obviously, my product wasn't fitting. I mean, let's use my
Mhm.
venture capital metaphor. I had built this product, but the
Mhm.
market wasn't buying it yet, right? Let's go back to the venture capital metaphor we just talked about, right?
Very nice.
Here was William, the product, but
Mm-hmm.
nobody was buying it, right? I got 150 no's on this product, right? And so nobody was buying it. So I decided, okay, I'm going to go into business school, build up my resume, get some financial training at JP Morgan, get some operational training at Merck. And now I'm further down the path of my journey of my life, and having now sort of financial training and operational training. And then that now made me more competitive to get into venture capital. And I was able to do it at that point, right? So, don't ever give up at the no, just figure out why they're saying no, and then augment that, right, along the journey. My advice to people that want to get into venture capital is, everybody wants to get into venture capital until they're in venture capital. I mean, venture capital is a great business. It's a great industry. Love it. Love my job. Love it to get to work with young entrepreneurs and even old entrepreneurs and get to see some of the most innovative things in the world. And it's a ton of fun. When it works, it's magical. When it works, it's magical. And when it doesn't, it's miserable. And there's just not much in between. So everybody loves stories like this, right? Huge success story, right? And it's, over 2 million people use this device worldwide. And that's a really cool thing, right?
Yeah, thank you so much for adapting and adjusting so we can keep
That's
going. We
okay.
really appreciate it.
Well,
Never ready for those. Ooh.
Yeah, so
we'll just keep it
getting
going.
back to it, yeah, you were in the question telling the students what is some valuable advice when they pick their career?
Yeah, so so a little bit on venture capital. Like, if you want to get into venture capital, I would say two things. You got to figure out what part of venture capital you want to be in. If you want to be an early stage venture capitalist, those tend to be more scientists, engineers, et cetera, because the issues you're dealing with tend to be a little more technical. If you want to be a late stage venture capitalist, those are usually more come at that through the finance side. So they'll go through investment banking and then into private equity and then leak into late stage venture. But if you want to do early stage, it's generally people that are more technically oriented, scientists, engineers, et cetera, people that have worked at technology businesses, usually in product development, et cetera. But kind of in general rule for everything in your career, just I tell people, don't be bashful, early on in your younger years, doing internships. It's kind of when I was leaving science and going into science from the sense of leaving science as a bench scientist, I kind of considered whether I wanted to go to law school and become a lawyer, intellectual property lawyer, or go into the business side of science. So I did a couple of internships. I worked at a law firm for a while, looked at what intellectual property or patent lawyers did. And then I worked at the technology transfer department at the institution and learned about technology commercialization. And it was over that kind of 1 year period of kind of experimenting and trying a couple of things that I began to figure out where I wanted to be when I was talking about getting on the applied side of science. So don't be bashful about doing that. The second thing I would tell people to do, and young in their career, and this is regardless of anything related to venture capital or anything, is go meet as many people as you can, always, right? And the great thing about being at the university is they always have speakers, alums that come back and they talk on all sorts of subjects. Don't be afraid to go to something that even it doesn't feel like it's in your interest, right? Let's say you're a scientist and want to be a scientist, and there's somebody coming to speak on, they're a sculptor, right? And they're going to come and talk about their career as an artist and as a sculptor. You'll be shocked at what you'll learn from people like that, right? And how that will inform your life, number one. Number two, you'll also be shocked at who they know, because everybody that's successful ends up knowing a lot of other successful people, even outside of their own careers, right? So they might know people that can be helpful to you. So go to as many of those things as you can as possible, and meet those people. I mean, I can think of many, many examples in my career where just serendipitously I was at the right place at the right time with my heart and brain open. and all of those
Mhm.
need to happen, right?
Yeah.
So you need to be at the right
Yeah.
place.
That's
you need to be at the
so-called
right-
luck.
And yeah, and that's my luck thing, which is, you know, you have to, I'll give you one piece of advice. There's an article out there, you can Google it. It's called Be Lucky. It's an easy
Mhm.
skill to learn, and look it up and read it. And there's actually a book written by the same author of that one named The Luck Factor. And he talks about all the things that are the characteristics of people that a lot of lucky things happen to them. So luck does happen and lucky things do happen to people. But I also truly believe personally, because it's happened to me, and then some of the readings I've done, that people can put themselves in a position to be lucky. And
Mhm.
so put yourself in a position to be lucky, which means go to all those things, meet people, talk to them. They may not be a direct fit, but they might know somebody who might be a direct fit that could be helpful to you.
It's awesome. Yeah, you shared some of those readings at the BC school, and I was reading up on them, and it's crazy just the change of perspective and how it makes you lucky and all that. But final question: we have audience from across the world, but what would you say is special about the Oklahoma and Tulsa ecosystem we have here?
Yeah, I would say that compared to many other things areas I've been to around the country, it's a couple of things. I think it's a universal commitment among everybody that's kind of pushing in the same direction,
Mhm.
right? Sometimes you go to these communities, they're all trying to do similar things, but everybody's kind of pushing in different directions, right? And it's creating this tension, right? Because this
Mhm.
person, this entity might want to go this way, and this entity might want to go this way. I feel like in Tulsa, everything's kind of, now that doesn't mean people aren't going in, but everything's kind of moving this way. People
Mhm.
might be moving a little bit like this, a little bit like this, but it's kind of still all going that way. Whereas
Mhm.
sometimes in other communities, you have the same people, but these people are pulling this way and these people are pulling this way, and there's another group pulling this way, and at the end, it's never moving off of here, right?
Uh-huh.
So I think it's the that kind of, everybody kind of gets a general direction of where everybody wants to go and is kind of all loosely heading in the right direction together. That number one. Number two, I think generally people want to help people, right, in this community. And I don't know if it's an
Mhm.
Oklahoma thing, I don't know if it's a Tulsa thing, I don't know if it's a whatever, but people genuinely want to help people and will work with people to be successful. So I think that willingness to do things, and if you're a person with a good idea and have a good story to tell, there's no shortage of people around town who won't be willing to help you and get behind you to see if they can make it work. So I think kind of those sorts of things.
Yeah, that's awesome. Seems like a lot of opportunity for growth here, which is super exciting as college students, and
Mhm.
so many opportunities out there. But thank you so much, Dr. Paiva, for joining us here today. Thank you so much for everyone who
Sure.
listened. We truly had a blast. We appreciate your time. So I'm Hayden
Sure. Sorry
Gensler.
about it.
And
Sorry about all the technical glitches, but
Oh,
we powered through it like every good entrepreneur.
Yeah.
you're
Yeah,
good.
no
Exactly.
worries.
That's a learning lesson right there.
Yeah, and I'm Danny Marcus, and this was the second M&G Career Spotlight interview.
Thank you.